crafters, it's Cynthia. I am back with another video, and this time I'm going to try to do one of those multiple card videos from a single kit. So this is the Simon Says Stamp June 2017 card kit, and you can see you get the Distress Oxide and Worn Lipstick. You get the Simon Says Stamp Barely Beige ink, which is really, really nice, and it's very pale, but that's a good thing. So then you get this lovely metallic ivory envelope, and it has a lovely pearlized effect to it, which is gorgeous, and then it's sticky so you can seal it. Here is the stamp set. I apologize that it's a little off screen, but it's full of fabulous floral images. There's a beautiful floral cluster and lots of sentiments. Here is the Echo Park Wedding Bliss collection papers, and I'm just leafing through them. A lot of them do have a wedding theme, but some of the other ones are a little more generic, so you can use them in multiple different styles. Then you also get a piece of the Tim Holtz 8.5 by 11 watercolor paper, but I went ahead and trimmed it down into pieces I can use. For cardstocks, there's the Simon Says Stamp Cotton Candy, the Simon Says Stamp Ivory, Simon Says Stamp Black. I added some whipped cream cardstock and tickled pink cardstocks, so I'd have more card bases, and they're both from my favorite things. These are watercolor paint samples that you get in the kit. There's a ultramarine, sap green, gold, and rose are the 4 colors, and I'll be using those as I make the cards. And then at the bottom, there's a sample sheet with different card ideas, and then it'll also detail everything that's in the kit. So I went ahead and cut down those card bases to make typical A2 size side folding cards. And here I'm talking about how you really do get a good value in the card pack, because the stamp set is yours to keep forever, and those 2 ink pads will last for a long, long time. So, excuse me, I'm going to go ahead and start with this little strip. It's 4 1/4 by 1 1/2 in size. And I'm going to do some stamping on that with some of the little individual flowers. So I'm picking the little daisy and the smaller rose. So I'm using my Versamark sticky ink. I treated that paper first, by the way, with my anti-static bag. And I'm going to use my Hero Arts white embossing powder. And I'm going to be stamping and then dipping in the powder as I go, so I don't accidentally overlap. So here it is all stamped. Now I'm just going to go ahead and use my tool to melt the powder down. And now I'm going to go ahead and do some of that watercolor painting with those 4 colors. So I'm going to start with the gold, which I'll use as the centers of the flowers. So I'm just going through and doing the daisy centers. Then I want the daisy petals to be in the blue. And it's nice because that embossing keeps the paint right where you want it to go. So I'm just trying to get a nice mix. And then I'm going to use the rose to paint the roses. And you can always go back and make colors a little darker if you want to. And then for the roses, I went ahead, oh, sorry, here I am. I used the sap green as a background color. And I took a sheet of the striped paper from the pack, and I went ahead and cut out a little sentiment opening. That was My Favorite Things die from years ago that I had in my stash. So I'm going to go ahead and just tape this down to the card front, and I'm using the ivory cardstock as my base. And see if there's any overhang, I can just trim that away. So now I'm going to put down my painted strip across the bottom. And then I'm using a sentiment, of course, from the kit, but when I'm picking out an ink color from my book, so I chose the cornflower from My Favorite Things. And there's the sentiment, and it's lovely because it totally matches the paint in those little daisies. So now I'm going to pick out some flowers to detail my sentiment area. And I'm taking another piece of that same watercolor paper, and I'm just going to stamp and heat emboss the larger rose, the daisy, and now the leaf as well. And I'm going to get multiples of those so that I can make a couple small clusters. And I'm going to go ahead and heat emboss all those images again. And now I am pre-wetting my paper so that the ink will flow really nice. And again, using those 4 colors from the kit. There's the sap green for the leaves. I'm using my aqua brush and a regular paintbrush. And I'm going back and adding a little more paint for depth. All right, there's the leaves. And now the daisies. And the thing I'm doing with the roses is I'm wetting the entire surface, filling it all in with the rose. And I'm going to put the yellow paint just wet on wet right in the center, and the 2 colors will mix and create actually a really lovely orange tone for the center of the roses. So that may not come across so well in the video, but in person you can definitely see the color difference. So, and then even on that little swatch there, you can see between the yellow and red, I mix them together and you can see that little splotch of orange, and that is what it makes. So now I'm going to go ahead and fussy cut out all of these images, which is pretty easy, certainly with the leaves. Very, very basic shape. And I'm just trying to retain that white embossed edge. So I'm trying my best to cut up against that, which is pretty easy. Now I'm just going to do the exact same thing with all the roses. And again, it's real quick and easy. These little cutters from Fiskars are absolutely amazing. So if you're ever out and about and you see a pair, you should totally grab some, because it's really, really comfortable in your hand. My hands get really fatigued when I try to do a lot of fussy cutting, and these little nippers just completely erase that problem. So here they all are. Now I just need to try to figure out an attractive little cluster here. So I'm just going to get a rough idea of what I want, and I don't want anything hanging off the edge, and there it is. So that is card number 1, and I think it turned out pretty cute, all things considered. So card number 2 is going to be on a black card base, and I decided to do a shaker. So there's my card base. I cut out a rectangle using a stitched rectangle stacks die from My Favorite Things, and I decided I'm going to do the sentiment actually in the window. So I'm taking the word celebrate from the stamp set, and I'm just going to use my Versamark ink, and I'm going to repeatedly stamp that across that whole rectangle. And now I'm going to use the Detail Gold embossing powder, and I'm just going to get that all covered up really nice. So now I'm going to melt the embossing powder. You might hear my cat crying in the background again. He's here to see what I'm doing. There he is. So this piece of paper I've already trimmed down. It's just a little bit smaller than my card base, and I cut the same rectangle out of the center, which is where my sentiment piece will fit. So I'm going to go ahead and just carefully tape that all around the edges, inside and out, and put it down on my card base. And I do get it a little crooked, but I actually go back and fix that later. It wasn't too bad. So now I'm going to attach the sentiment piece and put that in the middle. And now I'm going to, I created a frame, and I did that by using 2 of the rectangles together. Now I'm using some red line tape that's 1/8 inch wide, so it's nice and narrow. I'm going to go around all the edges. Here's my acetate. Again, I cut it with one of those rectangle dies so it would fit perfect. And it's going to sit there, but I'm going to add, of course, a layer of foam tape. And I'm just going to add one layer because I don't really want this too bulky, and the sequins will still move around inside with just one depth. So I'm making sure I get nice thin strips. And I'm going to treat that acetate with my anti-static bag because it helps to keep the sequins from sticking to it. Now I'm just creating my own little mix here with various pieces I already have. So I've got gold in 2 different sizes. So small gold sequins and large gold sequins right there. And then I'm going to add some of the Pretty Pink Posh Sparkling Clear, which is so lovely for everything. And then I had some kind of white opaque sequins with a iris kind of finish. So I'm adding that as well. Now I'm just going to stick it down over my sentiment window. And there we go. Cute little shaker card with an obvious wedding theme with the cakes and the celebrate. Very cute. All right, so card number 3, I'm going to use this lovely image from the stamp set, and I stamped it on the watercolor paper with my archival black ink so it would be waterproof. And now I am using my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. And I just grabbed an assortment of basic colors, and I'm starting out doing the flower centers here in the yellow. And I'm using my aqua brush for this. And I'm trying to decide now which leaves I want to do which way. So I'm using a lighter green, and since those are so thin and small, I'm just going to use 2 colors, a lighter green and a medium green, to get those stems and little bits right there. And then for those leaves here, I'm using the lightest and the medium green again. And I'm just putting down the color and using my aqua brush to pull the color out and get some blending. And this is real basic. You can certainly go very detailed with this stamp, but I just wanted to keep things pretty straightforward. So I will continue doing those little thin leaves like that, and the larger leaves I'm going to use the medium and the dark greens. So there it is, all colored. I went ahead and popped it out, cut it out with the largest of the Stitched Oval Dynamics die from My Favorite Things again, and now I'm using the Sentiment Forever and Always, and I'm just going to do a little strip on the black cardstock. And I'm using my Hero Arts white embossing powder. Get that all melted. And I'm just going to cut that down into a narrow strip. I think it's a 3/4 inch wide. Yeah, 3/4 inch wide strip. And I'm going to flag the end when I reach that point. Oh, and I'm picking out a background paper. So I decided to go with this lovely stripe, and I'm going to run it horizontally. And I'm using the ivory card base, and I'm going to do a landscape orientation. So I'm going to cut that out, and I'm first putting down a black mat, which is slightly smaller than the card base, and then the pattern paper is just slightly smaller than that. And then that nice oval piece there, which I will pop up on my foam tape. I really do like to use that whenever I can, because it adds a, dimension, but not a ton of dimension. So I'll get that centered the best I can, and then here is where I'm going to flag the end of my strip, and then I'll trim down the other end so it's not quite so long. And then I'm just going to do a little bit of foam tape under that free edge, and then just regular tape, and that way it is balanced. And that is card number 3. All right, so for card number 4, I decided I wanted to do a little more of the gold embossing. So I'm using the Impression Obsession Cover a Card Cling Background Stamp in Thin Stripes is the name of this one. And I'm just going to go ahead and ink it up really well with my little Versamark ink cube. And I've already got a panel cut here of black cardstock, so I'm just going to get that inked up really, really well. And of course I treated it first with my bag. So there's the stamping, and now I'm using the Detail Gold embossing powder. And I'm just going to cover that whole thing up. The edge isn't perfect, but I'm going to trim it down. So now I am melting the gold, which is always the fun part. I'm going to have to find another favorite gold because I'm already halfway through this container. So there is that, and then I'm going to go ahead and neaten up those edges just by trimming it a little bit. And I'm going to use this pattern paper from the pack, just an inch wide strip, which is going to be a little accent to my card front. And I'm just going to trim it down to the same size, which is the 5.5 inch long. And here's my ivory card base. And I'm just butting that up against the edge, and it'll be just enough to cover. So now I've got an oval here, and it's from the My Favorite Things Oval Stitched Stacks Dynamics, and I curved my stamp. It's the Congratulations stamp, and I just curved it to match the curve of the oval. And I'm putting on more of the Detail Gold powder, and I'm just going to go ahead and melt that really well. And then I decided I want to use the flowers, so I'm using the 2 roses and the leaf from the stamp set. And again, I treated a piece of black paper or cardstock. I'm going to stamp those out. Get that same Detail Gold embossing powder on. Then I'm just going to fussy cut those out, and they're really, really straightforward. It doesn't take any time at all. I'm leaving a very slight black edge just to give it a little bit more finished look. So this will go very quickly. So now I'm going to see what that looks like, but then I decided that it was a little sparse. So see about right here, I'm like, that's not good. So I'm going to take that off again, and I'm going to add the little daisy flower now. So again, I'm just going to stamp those out on some black cardstock. I'll use the same gold powder, of course. And then I'm going to cut those out again. These are a little bit more careful cutting, but it's still pretty darn easy. I wouldn't want to do 100 of these, but just these 2 isn't too bad. So now I'm going to go ahead and start attaching these pieces here to my oval. Most of these are just going to get attached flat. That center rose, the largest one, is popped up on foam tape. And there's a cute little cluster. And that's just going to sit right on my card front. So I am going to add a little more foam tape, because again, this tape isn't that thick, so it's not going to be aggressively popped up, just a little bit. I'm being very thorough, apparently. And oh, and then I'm going to trim the overhang just from the edge of the card. There wasn't much, but... And there we go. Cute. So the next card, I am using a pink card base. This is card number 5. And I went ahead and took 2 more papers from the pack, and I I just attached them together with a little tape. And then that's a piece of Simon Says Stamp khaki cardstock, which I thought was a nice compliment. So that's going to give me just a tiny bit of a reveal. Here is some pink nylon ribbon I found in my stash. So I tied a little double bow, and I'm just going to simply tie that, or excuse me, tape that flat to the back. And now I'm just going to tape this whole panel down to that pink card front. I love ribbon, but I don't use it as much as I should. So this is that piece from the very first card, and I hung on to it because it was so pretty, and now that's going to be, oh yes, this is the birthday circle die from Simon Says Stamp. I've had this for a while and I love it. So I popped out a cupcake in that same khaki and also the same cotton candy pink cardstock. Now I'm just going to use this baked brown sugar ink from Stampin' Up! Because I wanted a soft brown. And I'm just going to stamp the word celebrate. And again, I'm going to use some pieces of foam tape here to pop up this piece. Put that right in the center. And then just to add something, I'm going to put a little bit of Stickles Diamond glitter glue all over that frosting. It just adds a beautiful, beautiful shimmer and sparkle. That was card number 5. So for card number 6, again, I'm going to use the pink cardstock. I'm finally using the worn lipstick. The sentiment is for the happy couple. And I'm just going to stamp that onto this little circle I cut with the same cardstock. And then I took a selection of pattern papers from the kit and cut out 4 more circles in different sizes. And I'm just going to do a nice little random scattering. So start with the biggest. Here's that little word paper, the little tiny floral, another bit of that stripe, and then the sentiment piece I am going to pop up on some foam squares. There you go. And then I wanted to add something else, so I reached into my fabulous sequin collection, which is growing quickly, and I am just using right now some mini glue dots to tack down those 8mm special effects sequins there. And then I've got my fine line applicator bottle full of glossy accents. And when that dries, those sequins are not going anywhere. You would have to aggressively rip them off the card if you wanted to get them off. So it's a nice glue to use for sequins because it dries completely clear. So I'm just quickly tacking down those flat black sequins and then the sparkling clear. The flat blacks are, I believe, 5 or 6mm, and then those little ones are 4mm. And there you go. So I will run through the cards again. There's card number 1, which was so cute with that watercoloring. And card number 2, my little shaker card. And card number 3, where I did that watercolored oval piece. I really like that one. And card number 4 is the one with all that beautiful heat embossing in the gold. And card number 5, the birthday card with the little cupcake on it. And then finally card number 6 with the circles and the sequins. And I'll pull those down just a bit so you can see them better. But thank you so much. I hope you really enjoyed this video. It was the first time I was attempting a multi-card video, so thank you for being patient with me. If you want to see more of these, please leave a message in the comments. Let me know if you liked it. So you guys take care of yourselves, have an awful lot of fun, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.